Okay, we're going from
You
a new
need to
URL.
paste
So-
the link
I
in
did.
the chat. It didn't show up in the chat.
Really? In the other chat?
In the chat, yeah, on the.
I'm on the old one though. Where there's 22
Yeah,
people.
I don't see a link. I don't see a link there. Maybe put it in the description. Oof, that's tough.
Oh, let me switch to SubmitHub on there.
Okay. Yeah, that'll help for sure.
You see it now?
Yes.
It's because it's the official account.
Yes, it's good. Good to be official. Okay. Well, that is, I guess, something to learn for next time. Crazy. I still have this blur. I guess it's the autofocus thing.
Yeah.
But let me see if I can.
Well, sorry about the. I know this is a technical difficulty. So, I think I can pin this message.
Yeah.
And I've put it in the URL.
Yeah.
Looks like people are switching over, so that's a good thing.
That's nice.
Okay, so we'll just give it a minute until people join, just in case, because we want to make sure everyone's here. I saw there were 22 people on the previous one. So we've got 6 people who switched over. Hello to the 6 people.
Are we live?
Yeah, we're live.
Oh, excellent. I'm just toying around with my lighting here. Welcome, everyone.
Okay. We may as well start a little bit, and apologies for the technical difficulties, but we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, we wanted to talk about streaming fraud, which is a pretty big problem, especially on Spotify right now. So I think an interesting way to go about this is to sort of let you know why we feel like we're experts on the matter and what our history is with this. Then we can give you an overview of how Spotify's playlists work and the steps that we're taking to sort of keep our users safe from that. But even if you're not a SubmitHub user, we'll share some insights as to how you can keep yourself safe, which is, I think, what is quite important here. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start. Oh, that was great lighting. Loved it.
Yeah? What do you think?
Yeah.
I've been working on it. Sorry, I just need to update something on my camera because I'm currently sharing 4K video and I think it's lagging a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, while you're doing that, I'll get started. So I started SubmitHub in 2015 as a way to make it easier for musicians to contact music blogs. Now, for those of you who were around and sharing music at that time, music blogs were the best way to get your music out there. And collectively, they were very influential. Spotify was fairly new on the scene. Apple Music, I don't think, had even really launched properly yet. And music blogs were the best way to amplify your sound. So SubmitHub was created as a way to help music blogs deal with the overwhelming amount of musicians who were hoping for a piece of their attention. And it also helped musicians actually get in touch with music blogs who historically were ignoring the requests that they received because 300 emails a day is just too many. So SubmitHub was started in late 2015, and Dylan and I have been working on it since then. Initially, it was just about music blogs, but increasingly people started to ask for us to feature Spotify playlists. In 2017, I think we added our first playlists, and it was the wild, wild west. We didn't know that much about it, and one of the things I quickly realized was that Spotify doesn't share very much information about each playlist's analytics. So I couldn't tell how many listeners they had or where the listeners were coming from, but I did have a very shiny, interesting number, which was how many followers the playlist had. And that was really the most important data point that Spotify provided. So we started to list all these playlists on SubmitHub in 2017, and our main measure of that playlist influence was how many followers they had. It seemed like an okay one, right? Obviously, followers shows whether a playlist has engagement or not, but it turns out I was wrong. And shortly after we launched the Spotify side, a guy named Ari Herstand wrote an article about how SubmitHub was exposing artists to fake playlists. This was way back in 2017, so streaming fraud wasn't even really the term that was used at that point, but his argument was that the number of followers is not indicative of how many listeners a playlist has, and that followers can be easily bought. So a playlist with 100,000 followers won't have 100,000 listeners, probably won't even have 1,000 listeners. And so what he was saying was that at SubmitHub, we were misleading artists by showing this shiny follower number when in fact, they might actually get no exposure to their song. So that was a pretty big wake-up call for us. And I set about trying to solve that problem and identify more information about how engaged a playlist is. The first thing we did was we started to ask artists for spreadsheets from their Spotify for Artists. I don't know if you've ever looked at your Spotify for Artists, but you can actually export the data that you have there. And so we asked artists to share that information with us, and it was great. We were able to start pulling in listener numbers. And after about 6 months, we actually had a couple 100,000 data points, and we were able to give a more accurate picture about how many listeners each playlist has. So rather than showing followers, we switched our metric to listeners because we thought that was a much better reflection. So in many ways, I have Ari to thank for lighting the fire underneath us to incentivize us to try and find better ways of identifying whether a playlist is legitimate or not. So SubmitHub's journey into identifying fake playlists and fraudulent streaming started all the way back in 2017. And since then, we have worked really hard to improve our processes for identifying this. Now, one of the most important places for us to do that is to make sure that the playlists that are joining SubmitHub are completely legitimate, completely safe, and are going to get listeners for artists. So, Dylan, how do you feel about explaining a little bit of our application process so that people can understand how we curate our curators?
Sure. Yeah. So, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, hold on, let me restart that. Basically, we've
it's a live stream though.
I know. I was like, I've gone down the wrong path. Yeah, we have a lot of people signing up to be playlisters on SubmitHub. And what I was going to say on my first train of thought was actually that it wasn't always as popular as it is now. But we've always been pretty strict. And I think that is how we maintain the quality on SubmitHub, which I've heard from certain people in the industry that SubmitHub's got a good thing going, and that's largely based on what Jason's just lined me up to talk about, which is how strict we are on who we let in. So one of the good side effects of Ari giving us a bit of a lesson early on was that it forced us to focus on statistics. Jason's also a self-proclaimed internet nerd, but he's also a bit of a math geek, and numbers are his thing. He's you can't get a decimal by the guy. So it's like we throughout since Spotify's been around, and we got, we've been evolving with having Spotify playlists on SubmitHub. We've also been collecting data. And just to give you an idea of what kind of stuff we look at, with Spotify playlisters. It's not the follower count necessarily. There are aspects of the follower count that we are interested in, but it's also the listener numbers and how we get those and where those are coming from. And we track things like what countries those are coming from, how like what ratio of listeners to streams that they have, because those are two different numbers that Spotify gives you, which I'm sure any artist watching or anybody who's got a Spotify for Artists login knows that there's those two different numbers, and one is the actual listener versus the stream count. So if I have 5 listeners on my playlist and 1,000 streams, it means that somebody's just hitting loop on a playlist with all of my songs in it. And there's a very funny, famous instance of Dan from Wolfpack getting all of his fans to stream an album of basically, I think, White Noise on loop. And he earned himself a ton of money. And then that's, I think, around the time Spotify started cracking down on this stuff. So fast forward to today, that's one of the things that Spotify looks at when they're deciding whether songs have artificial looking streams or not. So we're looking at that. And we're also looking at the follower numbers, but mostly the pattern in their growth or decline. So if a playlist goes from having, 15,000 followers and drops by 200 a day, it's probably not as crazy as if a Spotify playlist with 2,000 followers drops by 250 a day. But we're looking at that. We're also looking at if it's like a continual drop or one big drop, or all of these things paint a different picture about what a playlist is about. And the other very important thing is spikes. And I think Jason can actually show you some screenshots if he wants to, of what some of these spikes and drops look like in playlists. But to just wrap up the playlist number considerations that we make, it's just to say that we're making sure that we don't let people on who might have suspicious numbers in any of these categories, plus many more. We don't let playlisters on who aren't proven to be bringing in listeners, not streams, listeners. And we don't let on people who have bad track records. We don't let on playlisters. What was the other reason? There was another one that I was thinking of. Payola, so that would fall into track record. We also, if we find that a certain genre or theme is too saturated, we'll stop playlist applications for that, or we'll decline them. And the sort of interesting number that may have changed, but is that we've only let on 20% of the applications that we've received to be playlisters.
I think it's actually fewer than that.
I think it's fewer now. Yeah.
I think what you've just done there is given an example of how complicated the whole process is. Today, Spotify expects artists to do this themselves. And starting late last year, Spotify actually started punishing artists for being in fake playlists. But there's a huge problem with this. So I think our topic here is streaming fraud, and I think it's become really relevant in the last year. And let's dive into it a little bit. So there are 3 types of playlists on Spotify. There are editorial playlists, algorithmic playlists, and third-party independent playlists. The editorial playlists are managed by Spotify. Initially, they were hand-selected, but these days they use a lot of algorithms to help make their decisions. That has blurred the line a little bit with algorithmic playlists, but these are largely considered radio playlists, and they use a whole bunch of complicated algorithms to try and generate a playlist of songs that they think a user will like based on that user's behavior or the theme of the playlist that they're looking for. And then the third one, which we're really interested in here, is third-party or independent playlists. These are playlists that can be made by anyone. You could make a playlist as an artist. In fact, I think Spotify actually makes a "this is artist name" playlist for you. But there are a lot of curators out there who have actually grown a following sharing music through their independent playlists. Now, where this is problematic is that some of these playlists are fake, and they've got different reasons for doing that. Initially, a lot of these fake playlists were doing it so that they could join platforms like SubmitHub and Groover and Daily Playlists. Some of them have succeeded in getting onto those other platforms, but because of all the reasons Dylan outlined, it's really difficult for a fake playlist to get onto SubmitHub. It doesn't mean it hasn't ever happened, but I'm pretty sure we've got a clean slate in terms of signing up fake playlisters. However that evolved, fake playlisters decided, you know what, making money on SubmitHub or similar platforms is not the way we want to go. It's a lot easier to just charge artists for placement on the playlist. Now, this is a violation of Spotify's terms. As an artist, you are not supposed to pay for placement in a playlist. If you do, you're violating their terms. And the playlisters who do this know that, but they don't care. They just want to take your money. So they'll put up their email in their playlist description. They'll put up their Instagram. They'll say, DM me for placements. You hit them up. They'll offer you $20 placement. It's groovy, but that's a lot of work. You actually, here comes the zoom on Dylan. Am I not being entertaining enough? I'll do a little dance while I do this. Okay, so it's a lot of work to sort of put yourself up there. What if you could just end up on the radar of 10,000 artists a day? It's like free advertising. So a company named Waver or Artister or Reposter, it's all the same company. They realized that if they add artists to their playlists and pump them full of fake plays, those artists will often reach out on their own out of curiosity and ask for more placement and more plays. And so what Artister and Waver started to do is that they would add 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 10,000 songs per day into these playlists, pump them full of fake plays, and then hope that 20 or 30 or 40 of them would come and pay for placement. And it's proven really effective. They're making a lot of money here, and they are targeting a lot of artists. On Spotify's side, instead of taking down these playlists, they've decided it's better to punish the artists. Now, the artists aren't asking to be added to these playlists. They don't want to be in there. But Spotify is now fining artists or fining distributors who in turn fine the artists. So you'll get a $15 fee if you get fake streams on your song that you didn't even ask for. So it's becoming an increasingly huge problem on Spotify. And it just adds a whole nother dimension to the difficulty of trying to keep yourself safe as an artist. So what we wanted to do on SubmitHub was actually try and package this up in a way that any person could research for themselves without having to do an insane amount of work. And because we've been collecting all this data since 2017, we're really well positioned to give you that information. So there are a couple easy ways to avoid fake playlists. And I'll go through them in no particular order. The most obvious one is don't pay for placement. This can happen through Instagram, through email, but it also happens on websites like Fiverr. If you're not familiar with that, it's a marketplace where you can hire people to do jobs for you. And so on Fiverr, you'll find a lot of people offering organic Spotify promotion for $10 or $20, and then they'll just add you to a bunch of fake playlists. Another thing to look out for is any company or website that uses the word organic plays. The fact that they're emphasizing so much usually means they're trying to hide something and trick you. In general, if it seems too good to be true and too easy, it's likely violating Spotify's rules either through fake listeners or through some other payola network.
Except for SubmitHub.
But it's not too easy, right? The whole thing with SubmitHub is that it's not necessarily easy.
We make the submission process easy.
We make the submission process easy, but the consideration on whether your song will actually be shared needs to be about the merit and not about whether you're paying extra money. So on SubmitHub and other similar platforms, you're not paying for placement, you're paying for the time that the curator spends listening to your song. And if they like it and they want to share it, you shouldn't pay more. You don't have to, because that's not what you're paying for. You're paying for their time, not for their sharing. So one easy way to avoid fake playlists is to not pay for placement. Another way you can do it.
There's another easy, sorry, just while you're
Go for it.
is don't stack all of your songs in one playlist and leave it on repeat overnight, because it's not necessarily fake playlist, but Spotify will, and we've seen it here and there. Spotify will use its information to detect sort of unusual streaming patterns and flag your song. And if you don't have that many streams on your way to your first 1,000 streams, you're going to have a high percentage of streams that are from an unusual, from maybe one or two accounts, and that high percent, 20% bot streams or potentially botted streams, and then your song's going to get taken down. I've seen that happen.
We don't know explicitly what Spotify's metrics are here, but I have heard that if 90% of your streams are deemed fraudulent within any billing period, you are liable for a warning or a takedown. And that comes from your distributor. They make the ultimate decision there.
I mean, when we were at South by Southwest this year, and we were listening to a panel on fraudulent streams, and they said that based on some of the information that they're tracking, is if a phone that's streaming the songs never loses its charge and is always on 100%. So they have that level of information, because and these bot farms used to be like a whole bunch of phones glued to a wall, always charged to 100% and always in the same location. They can use that information to track whether or not your song is being played by bots.
And I think now it's a bit more difficult because people are aware of that, so they fake the numbers. Yeah. It's gotten pretty complex. So avoiding payment is one way. Getting added to these other playlists automatically is difficult to avoid. My top suggestion is to not use DistroKid. They seem to be the most targeted distributor by these fake playlists, and that's because DistroKid automatically adds all of their new releases to a wheel of playlist. So every day DistroKid uploads 5,000 new songs to this playlist, and all the bot playlists just copy that. So I would recommend against using them. And I believe actually, is it MusicHub would be the one to use, right? That's also
there's
Gema's, right? MusicHub is Gema.
MusicHub.
Yeah. That's probably a better one. I would recommend that over DistroKid.
Anything over DistroKid, I think, is what
anything. I mean, I know Symphonic is a great one as well. So and Emu Bands is another one we like. So just careful with some of the distributors. Make sure that they don't automatically add you to their own playlists. It's actually a pretty dangerous thing. We've got 5 minutes left. And so what I wanted to show you was actually this tool that we've created to help anyone identify or at least do the research on whether a playlist might be fraudulent or not. And it is called the Playlist Checker on Spotify. So I'm going to go ahead and share that tab with you right here. Boom. So the idea with the Playlist Checker is that we are making all of our data available to you, our follower history metrics, our listener numbers, and a number of other flags, including ultimately a stamp of whether we've manually reviewed it and think that it is a fraudulent playlist. So the way you start is by pasting in the URL of the playlist that you're interested in analyzing, and then you can click Analyze. And that's going to bring us over to, in this case, a playlist that I know is fake, but this is a good example of a more obvious one. So some of the red flags I can identify with this playlist that make me believe that it's probably not legitimate. Number one, the title of the playlist is Release Radar. This is a really generic name that is copying Spotify's Release Radar feature. it's unlikely that a playlist would grow to this size by simply copying a generic name like this. Another red flag here is that we have been tracking daily data for any playlist with more than 50 followers for well over a year now. We're tracking about 3 million playlists per day. If a playlist had 11,000 followers, they definitely would have been in our system. So the fact that they appeared on June 22nd out of the blue with more than 11,000 followers was a huge red flag. Another one here is that on August 19th, a couple of weeks ago, they lost more than 10% of their followers in a single day. That's quite unusual and usually indicates that Spotify has cleaned up some fake accounts. So when I'm looking at this playlist, those are some of the red flags that I'm going to identify right up front. I can then go ahead and actually open up this playlist on Spotify, and I'm going to take a look at some of their other public playlists here, and I can see that they're following a lot of others, but these are just like alt now what is that? It's really generic. It has 0 followers. So you can kind of look at the playlist and get an idea of whether you think they look legitimate or not. Weekend vibes, that's kind of weird. And then
I don't think we can like totally rate them based off of their titles, but I think that when you see a playlister who's just got heaps of followers
on multiple playlists,
you've got to look into, is the quality there in the curation, and like, yeah, it's just sometimes it just seems kind of too good to be true.
Here's a great one as an example.
Yeah.
So this playlist here is clearly buying fake followers. So in a single day, they lost 20,000 followers. And then a couple of days later, they gained back 25,000 in one go. So this is an example of a really easy playlist to spot. This is just completely irregular growth that you wouldn't go through. What you can see at the top here is that we've actually added a note about why we think it's botted, and we've got this red flag here. So there's 3 different types of flags that we have on our playlist: unsure, verified, or not safe. If it says not safe, it means that we've manually looked at that playlist and we've determined that they cannot be trusted. So here's another example. Is this the same one? This is a different one. Same one?
Looks
anyway,
similar.
you can look at these playlists and you'll see, oh wow, look at that. Spike, huge amount of followers, and then they all disappeared. So these are the kind of irregular patterns that to me just sort of
also the ones that don't have any the ones that flatline, it's also an interesting one to look out for.
Here's another,
if there's no change, if it's like they're not even losing followers, that's odd.
It can get tricky to tell sometimes. So these guys, for example, this is a more complicated one to tell, but they did.
Well, zoom into 30 or 90 days.
They're losing a few followers a day. But actually, the reason that I was able to tell that these guys are fake is that you can, and this is getting really in depth, but we kind of do this for you. I can poke into all of these, click on an artist that has been featured here. So this one's called Puzzle.
Or Puzzle, perhaps.
Is my internet a little bit wonky here? Come on.
See, if you were living in Germany, you wouldn't be having this problem.
There you go. All right, here we go. So I can go through and click on this, and then I start to notice that a lot of these playlists pop up here. Chill pop, it's both press play. I can start digging into each of these, and I'll quickly see these kind of connections between these random artists that are in here, and they get featured on all the same playlists. I think I need to double check if our background data server's happy here or not. Look at that. This artist got featured on 3 playlists, each of them with huge numbers by press play. It just doesn't seem like a normal type of thing that you would see there. And we've gone ahead and flagged that for you, so you don't actually have to figure that out yourself. So the not safe ones on here, you can plug in and do that. Unsure means we haven't really looked at it, so we don't have a conclusion one way or the other. Sometimes they're difficult to tell. Like this one doesn't necessarily have a red flag. That spike was over the course of a month. So It's hard to tell in this case whether they are genuine or not. And what you can do in that instance is you can ask us to do an analysis. So right here, you can say, I want us to take a closer look. Bink. Click on that, and you'll be able to see.
Yeah. I think that, I mean, what I really like about that tool is it's a tool made for the community to use. It's completely free to use, and it's designed to help every artist in a landscape of challenges that are pretty anonymous. You just don't know what's behind a playlist. And so now
I wish
this
Spotify just made this data public. They would solve a lot of problems if they did.
Yeah.
So one of the last things I wanted to talk about was what happens if you get added to a fake playlist. So I think there are 2 steps you need to take. Number 1, report it to your distributor immediately. Say, hey, listen, I've been added to this fake playlist. Pretty sure it's fake. I did not ask to be added to it. I've requested that they remove it. So that's step 2. If that playlist has contact information, contact them. They're waiting for you to contact them. That's the whole point. They want you to contact them and buy placement. But if you contact them and say, please remove me, from what I've heard, most of them actually will. They'll go ahead and remove you. And then the third thing you do is you log into your Spotify for Artists, you open up a support ticket, and you tell them as well. They're going to go ahead and tell you, oh, yeah, we're looking into it, or, oh, sorry, that happened. But I think what's important here is that if you tell your distributor, you tell Spotify for Artists, and you make this request, if a month later they come back and they say, hey, you got a bunch of fake streams, you've got a record of history, communication with them to demonstrate that you were aware of it, you did not request it, and you notified them immediately. And that's going to help a lot in terms of whether you get punished or whether they let it fly. Unfortunately, Spotify is not stopping this problem. I don't think it's because they are willingly doing that. I think it's actually too big for them to stop at this point. So the problem is that they're punishing artists, and that really sucks. Yeah. Hopefully the tools we gave you here help you a little bit in terms of keeping yourself safe. Unfortunately, no one's 100% safe. Last week we had to remove 3 SubmitHub playlisters who were attacked. That's the right word.
That sucks.
By someone who bought 10,000 followers for each of their playlists.
They basically
didn't request it.
Yeah. There's like a bit of an insidious or a not so nice nature to some of the playlist community, where if you want more spotlight on your playlist and you send a whole bunch of bots over to somebody else's playlist who's got a similar name or whatever, it'll sort of tank the other. I mean, probably the biggest side effect is that they'll get removed from SubmitHub or one of the other playlist submission websites. But it probably also signals to Spotify that it's a playlist that needs like less focus. So
so these are people who are trying to take over someone's search term. So for example, if you rank well for gym music, your playlist is probably going to be attacked quite a lot by other playlisters who want to rank well for gym music. So they will buy fake followers, and it's
just one more point. One more point that I realized I didn't bring up in my section earlier about using statistics is that we're tracking all of this stuff in the background. And as Jason just showed you, that's one aspect of how we manage it. But whenever something pops up, we've got a team of people going in, making sure it's all legit and keeping the ecosystem of SubmitHub safe. And that's why Jason's saying that these 10,000 followers pop up on playlists, and then there's somebody from our team to swoop in and make sure that that they're no longer on SubmitHub. And that's one of the aspects of SubmitHub. That's one way to keep yourself safe from fraudulent playlists. That's what I'm trying to say.
to have us do it for you. We're basically consultants on this. So if you've got any questions, feel free to either ask in the chat rooms on SubmitHub or send us an email. You can reach me at jason@submithub.com, or you can open a ticket on SubmitHub for customer support.
Yeah.
So
and
any questions are probably on streaming.
You can reach me at jason@submithub.com as well.
Yeah. Cool. Well, thank you for joining us. I'm going to go ahead and end the stream here. Sorry about the link issue that we had.
Silly,
but it looks like most of you ended up making it. So
great. Thanks, Gema. Oh wait, by the way, yeah, we should just say Gema or Gema or however you want to say it. Thank you for. Oh wow, does this give me?
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, just thank you for doing this in collaboration with us or promoting it to us, to your users. They're very much alive in this conversation about how to protect yourself from streaming fraud. And yeah, it's just good to be in connection there. So thanks for that. And I'm not sure if I've missed anything else that I should have said.
Did that work?
Yes, it did work. Yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. Jason's, you're having too good of a time. I think we got to close this thing down. But yeah, thank you, Gema. Thank you, Gema.
All right,
cool.
Yeah, we can't say it. We're English speakers, so although you speak Dutch now,
I'm working on it. Yeah.
Ich spreche kein Deutsch. Okay, cool. Thank you for giving us your time, and hope it was helpful. Ciao.
Auf Wiedersehen.